very mundane, but immediate, kind of real-time practical importance for people. And so it's a whole lot of different things for different countries, different governments, different stages. But actually, the one thing that is key to it is actually you've got to make this irreversible.
And do you see different steps that have been taken as leading to irreversibility? And what are the I don't want to say the evolutionary process of open government, but I think what you just described is that some countries are in different places. What's the end state, if you will, of open government in terms of outcomes?
Yeah, no, I don't think there is an end state, actually. And one of the things we've been very clear about is that to be a member of the Open Government Partnership, the government has to commit to the principles and subscribe to the principles, and that's really, really important. But actually, in terms of the reporting, are they meeting the commitments made in the action plan? Not every the end point will not be the same for every government. It's actually the trajectory, it's the progress. We'll be hard on ourselves as well. We're continually working on what are the next things that we can do. One of the things we struggle with is the quality of data. A lot of the data that we put out there is a very variable quality. One of the remedies for that is to publish it. Not to say we're not going to publish it because we don't think it's good enough. You publish it anyway, and you let people critique it and challenge it, and then, hey, it starts to get better.
So this leads to a question. The open data conversation is one that has very different contexts for different countries.
Yeah.
The United Kingdom has been driving quite a bit of this conversation, not least because you have some of the world's great thinkers in this space. So Tim Berners-Lee, Nigel Shadbolt are driving Open Data Institute there. And certainly data.gov.uk is an important site in this context. So other countries are looking to you for leadership on this. But the civil society connection there in terms of a developer community to make something useful of it isn't as robust in every country as it might be in Britain or in my country or even in Kenya where there are a couple thousand developers in Nairobi. Are there other reasons to be more thoughtful about using data for internal reasons, right? For productivity, for efficiency, for transparency, intra-government? Is that something that you're seeing or driving towards?
Well, I think definitely within the public sector. Open data with schools, for example. Comparison, so head teachers, governors of schools can see that our school is doing brilliantly at maths compared with the one down the road, but not in English or languages. And actually, they won't necessarily know that. And having that data coming out in a very granular way will be a real stimulus to improving performance. Likewise in health outcomes and transport and in the criminal justice system, it definitely stimulates the productivity and performance within the public services. But I would say, actually, I set up very quickly after we formed the government nearly 2 years ago our transparency board, which does include, as you say, Nigel Shadbolt, Tim Berners-Lee, a number of other eminent open data experts. And I have found them incredibly useful. They're not always easy because they're challenging. But when we're trying to embed a culture of openness and a presumption in favor of transparency across the government, it's incredibly useful to bring other parts of government, other departments in, and I kind of throw them into the lion's den with our transparency experts, because they can, in a very expert way, challenge the multitude of reasons that often get put up for why we can't possibly be transparent about this, or we've got to keep that hidden. And that challenge is incredibly important. I won't have, myself, the expertise to do that, nor will my officials necessarily cover all of the ground. So having those external challenges is unbelievably important,
now,
if not always comfortable.
Important question as we look at comparing countries and trying to learn from one another is that in many cases will always be measured by your actions, not your words. And so countries will look at Western democracies and say, well, yes, you say don't ever block the internet, but there are cases where you may have shut it down yourself. You say protect freedom of speech, but you're prosecuting whistleblowers. You say be accountable to the people, but perhaps on a national security issue for a number of reasons, you say we're not going to talk about this.
Yeah.
And I know that when I talk to people in other countries, they're curious about this. How do you define the limits of openness, right?
And it's really important to do that, and to do that in a way that is people understand and can understand why you're drawing the line where you are. And Tony Blair recently has said that he deeply regrets the Freedom of Information Act, and a number of Labour ministers who were responsible for it have said that. I think by and large a lot of it's worked really well. But I think what we need to do is set out really clearly, but it's introduced into a culture where the presumption is in favour of secrecy, not in favour of openness. And so there was a reluctance to release in response to freedom of information requests. I think we need to be much more open about pushing out data, pushing out the evidence on which policy decisions are made, but then be very protective of the space within which advice gets given to decision takers so that it can be candid, because otherwise you just push it underground. And it's really important that data should be, that advice should be formal, but very candid, and needs to be protected, or it won't be candid. National security can be used as a kind of alibi for, we can't possibly release that, imperil national security. Well, we need to challenge that, and for it not to be kind of just a useful excuse. But there are lots of cases where it is genuine, and we need to respect that. The whole thing about censorship of the internet, I think, is really interesting. One of my responsibilities is cyber security, which we use as a kind of, I think, a rather sort of retro phrase.
Network security or IT security is usually a bit.
Yeah, exactly. Why is this an issue? Because of this amazing, wonderful thing called the internet, which has been so liberating and driving prosperity and happiness and well-being. It's been fantastic. But there are risks with it, and we need to have proportionate security around it. And we have this thing called the Budapest Convention, which some governments have been reluctant to sign up to because they fear it will lead to, or some parliaments, they fear it will lead to censorship. But actually, the governments, the states which are most prone to interfere with the freedom of the internet are also those from those countries where actually attacks on the internet are most likely to come. The openness of the internet is incredibly important. There will always be a bit of a tension between the proper desire to protect intellectual property, private property rights and intellectual property, but and the openness of the internet, and that's a perfectly healthy tension, and governments will have to strike that balance in the appropriate way, and it won't always be struck in the same place for all time, because the possibilities will change and do change. So this is we're dealing with complexities which didn't exist before, but actually the great thing is these are complexities which arise out of what are overwhelmingly benign developments, or developments which are really good in social terms, economic terms, and in terms of people's well-being and happiness.
Well, thank you very much for your time, and as we say in these contexts, I hope to see you online.
Very good.
Perhaps I'll see you on Twitter sometime soon.
Possibly.
Possibly.
I have a Twitter account in order to follow Twitter. Haven't yet leapt into the deep end, though.
Okay. Well, it's an exciting place if you ever want to come hang out. Let me know. We'll have a chat.
Will do.
Take care,
Thanks,
sir.
Alex.
All right.
Okay.